Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach Better from Eduro Learning. My name is Kim Cafino, and I will be your host in today's episode. This week, we're chatting with 5 awesome instructional coaches from around the world, all about different coaching models. Kerri-Lee, Tim, Diana, Ben, and Maggie share the ins and outs of the coaching models they have experienced, and we have a really meaty conversation about their strengths and weaknesses. Every school is unique, and this conversation demonstrates how much of an impact school culture, readiness, and history can have on exactly how coaching works. If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us know what you want to hear more about. Subscribe to the channel to see all of our coaching videos, and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video is posted. Please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got 2 great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. I am going to ask each of you to please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your current experience. And if you want to highlight specific coaching experience, that's great, or just tell us where you're at right now. And I will just call on you in the order that I see you in the bottom of my screen. So I'm going to start with Ben.
God, I was hoping I wouldn't be first. Well, my name is Ben Sheridan. I'm a learning innovation coach at NIST International School in Thailand. I've actually coached in 3 schools. This is my 3rd school.
Cool.
Yeah.
Diana, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Diana Biabout, and I'm currently at the American International School of Guangzhou in China in a role of innovation coach. I've coached at 2 other schools internationally, and I've also had experience as an instructional coach in the United States.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kerri-Lee.
Hi, I'm Kerri-Lee Beasley, and I'm Director of Digital Learning at GEMS World Academy here in Switzerland. I've probably got about just over 10 years experience as a coach, and I was coaching at United World College of Southeast Asia in Singapore for about 8 years before my current role.
Awesome. Thank you. And Maggie.
Hello, I'm Maggie Hossler-Grain, and till this summer I was Director of Education at ASB in Mumbai, and I'm currently living in the UK now, and I'm working independently, doing PYP workshops and also working for Consilience, coaching and doing technology integration workshops as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Bray, sometimes known as TS. I'm the Director of Educational Technology at Chung Na Dalton School, and I have actually worked with Ben before at Korea International School, and I have worked with somebody who Maggie has worked with at American School of Bombay. I don't know if she knows that or not, but Samoa and I used to work at KIS together, and I've known Kerri for a long time digitally, and I'm just brand new to knowing the other persons here, so it's great. As a model, I think I'll get into that later. I think what the model I would call it is the bizarre model that got made up by a group of guys at KIS.
Awesome. So all of us, and you guys know me, I'm Kim, and I'm currently working for Eduro Learning, and I have been a technology coach, facilitator at international schools for about 20 years before I started working for Eduro for myself. And so I think we've all had experience in lots of different schools working under or within or as part of lots of different coaching models. And it's really interesting to see how each school kind of implements coaching differently, how it looks differently in every school that probably we've all either worked in or consulted at or visited or talked to friends about. They're all so different. So I thought today we could kind of get together and just talk about what is at least one coaching model that you're familiar with, what are its strengths and weaknesses, and how do we compare and contrast those amongst our different schools? So does anyone want to get started and tell us about a coaching model, or do you want me to call on you? All right, that seems like you want me to call on you. So I'm going to call on you, and I will start with Diana.
Coaching model. This is where, for example, in my current role as well, where we're looking at what's the goals of the school, the goals of the school community, the vision, the mission. What are those things, and then what do teachers and students need regarding technology and innovation to meet those goals? So it's very much about assessing needs and then providing the support for those needs.
Diana, I missed, you gave it a name, and I missed that part because the connection cut out. What was the name that you would call the model you have?
The best I can I don't have an official name for it. I just call it more of a needs-based coaching. I mean, we're all meeting needs, but with this one, it's very open to what the school community, the teachers, the students, the parents, what they need, and using that, then how do we support that?
So tell us a little bit about your staffing. What does the structure look like in your school? How many coaches are there? Who do you report to? How does it tie in with, let's say, curriculum and instruction? And how do you work together with other people at the school that are kind of a natural fit, like maybe counselors and librarians? How does that kind of structure work?
So at my current school, we have a director of technology and innovation, and he's our administrator. And then there's a middle school coach, and I'm associated with high school, although the middle school coach and I both cover secondary. And then there's also an elementary coach. And so there's a lot of we have a lot of communications. I'm new to the school as well, which is that whole other component. But we also, the way that I've been working as far as starting this off is really getting to know the school and what's been happening and what they want to do. And then the middle school coach actually has some classes that he's teaching, but my schedule is open. So it's up to me in general to decide what I'm going to address and how. So for example, what a lot I'm doing right now for the beginning of the school year is meeting with teams, meeting with individuals and finding out what kind of needs that they have and supporting that, and finding resources and setting up times to be in classrooms. It covers a lot. There's a lot of pieces to it, and the advantage is that we can really tailor it to what the teachers and the students need. A challenge is that we really have to cover a lot of bases and really do a lot of assessment and reflection and resetting of goals, and so it's a constant, lots of communication with a lot of different people.
So I would say, yeah, I think that does sound awesome. And I think it sounds like a coaching model that I would say I feel really familiar with. There's someone in each division. You work within the technology, innovation, learning area, and your goal is to support student learning across your division, but also as a team across the whole school. Does anyone else feel like their model is similar to that? All right, Kerri-Lee, you're up next.
I was just really glad you went first, Diana, because I wasn't sure really what to call it.
Right.
Gosh, I need this to have a name, and I think you nailed it in terms of being that needs-based, and I guess I would also add personalized. So it's not going to be the same for everybody. There's not a recipe that's going to work the same for everybody. If I talk about my current school, I'm the only coach in a pre-K to 12 setting, so I have to stretch quite broadly. So the way that I tend to be used is to work with individuals, to team teach, and then to plan together, and then come in and do a couple of lessons where we do something together. And usually that helps spread some of the practice. If I think about my previous school, it was significantly larger, 2,500 students on our campus. We had 4 coaches doing the same thing, 2 in primary, 1 in middle, and 1 in high. And it was that same model, but because of the scale, we also had tech mentors. So in each grade level, we had one person identified as the technology or digital mentor for that group. So we would meet with them to do a lot of the planning for what they might want to do in their grade level as a whole. It was definitely not something where there was an expectation that everybody participated all the time. So it wasn't directed in that everybody has to do this, but it was invitational. However, what I found worked the most is work with the willing, and then they will spread it, and that will be the best model to get people on board.
So you mentioned that in your former role, there were about 2,500 students on campus. How many on your current campus now?
350.
Okay. So it's probably almost like a similar ratio for you to the number of teachers that you work with. It just happens to be K to 12 as opposed to just elementary. I'm going to put you on the spot one more moment now, but you're the only coach. So you have the issue that many coaches have, that you're working in isolation. No one else on campus really understands what your role is, and you really don't have anyone else who is in your role to collaborate with. It's not like you can go to the middle school person or the high school person and talk about coaching like Diana can. It's just you.
It's just
Awesome.
and it was a significant challenge when I first came. I'm like, wow, I did this by myself. I really valued that the collaboration with my other teammates back at my previous school. But I think one of the beauties of a network such as this is that you guys are my network, and I can reach out to you, and I continue to do so for suggestions or support, and also finding those pockets of innovation and excitement about the thing. You find your people, and those people become those messengers for you, and I think that's the way to do it, that relational building approach. I'm thinking of you, Diana, in a new school, and the time that it takes to create those relationships.
And there is, like, although it's a disadvantage in that you may not have a partner teacher in a different division, it's almost like an advantage, because it kind of forces you to build those relationships with teachers, so you have like your team of people that want to work with you. Because I know I felt that way when I first got to YS. I was the only coach. There was someone who was part-time for elementary, but the roles were different. And I just felt like I got nobody else to work with. I'm going to find the people who want to work with me and make that my team. And I think, as stressful as that can be a huge advantage too. Awesome. I am going to call on Ben.
Mimi, call on me.
Yeah, good. Perfect.
All right. I don't want to go last, So we have the MACM model, which is the most awesome coaching model. No, it's we don't have a name for it, but it's very similar to what Diane and Kerri-Lee had shared, but I think it might be the only person without like technology in my title. And we've really sort of divorced ourselves from technology purposefully. When I got here, we took digital out of our job title and focused on innovation, because that is sort of focused on doing things in new and better ways, and it could be technology related or could not have anything to do with technology. Usually it does, right? But we figure if we kind of wanted to set this expectation that in order to be a teacher at our school, you have to have some sort of baseline proficiency in technology. And like I think Diane was talking about and Kerri-Lee was talking about previously at her school, she worked with like a team lead person. So we have team leaders, and if there is some sort of baseline knowledge that someone needs, then they go to the team leader for that sort of help, not necessarily us, because that sort of puts us almost like in a consultant role where we come in and teach them something. We're not actually coaching them through it like a problem of practice. And so we wanted to sort of shift our focus to be focused more on practice and the learning experience you want to create for the kids, and less on the tools and the hardware. And so it's been great because our tech department actually we've offloaded a lot of that, even like Google Drive training, like our tech department actually does that. So we don't have to actually do that. So what we've done is we've really tried to actually define the difference between what a consultant does and what a coach does. And it's not to say that we never do consulting, but when we are in that mode, we name it and we say, okay, I'm going to go into the consulting mode, and then we explain, why we're doing what we're doing, and we may team teach or model or these sorts of things. But if we're actually in a coaching mode, then it's very different. It's a different conversation than if we're coming in as a consultant. But like Kerri-Lee said, also it's invitational. But then we also have different levels of how we work and who we work with. We just had a meeting with Cheryl, the other coach, and myself. Just had a meeting with year one, and they wanted to identify a problem of practice that they, as a team, wanted to focus on. And so what we help them do is generate some problem statements. And so like we noticed that, we don't have enough time to do X, Y, and Z, or we don't have enough time to document learning in the, period. And then we look at, so what are the things contributing to this problem? You know, we don't even talk about solutions. We try to understand it. So anyways, we lead them through these protocols, et cetera, and help them come up with this intervention that they're trying to address, this problem of practice with. And then we can act as like data gatherers. So we can come in and say, you know, you're applying this intervention. We take the data to see if it's actually working or not, and then we give it to you. And so we're kind of like impartial and objective. We're just providing them data. And then based on that conversation, if there's smaller individual goals that individual teacher wants to work on, they can talk to us and we can help them sort of develop those more personal sort of things to address in their practice. And then there's another, but I'm gonna stop there before I go to the next one. Any questions? Because I'm talking really fast. Any questions from anybody?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Is it a cognitive coaching model that you're running there?
So there is definitely cognitive coaching in it. So like if we go into a coaching conversation, like sometimes my goal personally is like never offer any advice, just ask questions. Like if you can get through a whole conversation by just asking questions and paraphrasing, then you're like, sweet, I did my job. You know, because as soon as you start offering suggestions, you're slipping into that consulting role, right? Sometimes if someone's stuck and they can't move beyond something, you may step out and say, well, right now I'm going to offer you some advice, you know, because I see you may be stuck. These are some things I've done in the past. And then you slip back into that other thing. So yes, it's not strictly cognitive coaching, but we do use that at certain points. Any other questions? Okay, yes, Diana.
So I'm curious, how does this communicate to the staff? Does the staff have training on coaching? And because it does sound very much like it's innovation, it's learning, like you said, less focus on the technical side of things and training that, but providing that. So I'm curious how's that, because that's a big thing, is how is this communicated to the staff? Okay, which I think in all of our jobs.
Yeah, that's sort of like the next level that I was going to. So it's perfect segue. So the next level is we actually work directly with admin on stuff. And so they have an agenda. That sounds bad. They have an agenda. They have a vision or, you know, something they're trying to achieve, right? Something, a spot we're trying to move toward. And so we are sort of helping everybody move in that direction. And so they communicate how we can help teachers do that. And so they're big on the message. And so we will get up in front of staff and communicate how to work with us. We first started with, this is what we do. And we were very, very clear on creating that. But then everybody understood what we did, but they didn't understand how to use us or how to engage. And so then we moved to like, actually, okay, this is how you actually engage with us. And these are the steps. I mean, like, you know, very, very sort of discreet, right? And then these are the different ways you can use us as well. But this is how you start it. We also work as a coaching team. So we have learning innovation coaches. We have like us, and then we have the math coach, and then the literacy coach. And we all sort of sit in the same department. So we're removed from, like, we don't sit anywhere near tech or anything. We sit more towards the curriculum side of things, is where we want to be. So we go to planning meetings so we know what's going on. We go to unit projection meetings so we know what's going on. So we work really closely with admin on understanding, like, also like where teams are. Like, do we need to help with certain aspects of teams? So we work on like a team level, or are there certain things that admin's doing that they want to gather evidence of, like, we're trying to move teams towards this direction, you know, and they're applying some interventions and they don't know if it's actually working or not. So we help them sort of understand like what's happening. So there's kind of a long-winded explanation. Sorry, guys.
So I'm excited for Maggie to talk next. So I'm letting Maggie know that you're going to be on next. But Ben, I know that NIST has a culture of cognitive coaching in the school. So there is an understanding of like that kind of template for a conversation.
Yep.
Are there ever any other people who do coaching besides the people with the job title coach at your school?
Well, I guess it would be like, in what capacity? Because like a peer coaching, Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And then but sometimes the role of like the shift between consultant and coach is blurred. Like people would think they're coaching, but they're kind of consulting sometimes. But for me, like that's okay, because it's all about, hey, you have something, you can help me do something better. And I think that's the culture of coaching, is being open and transparent in your practice and asking people to come in to help you get better. So we definitely have that between teams, and then also across teams as well.
So here's a stupid question, or I know stupid questions, but here's a like semantics related question.
Yeah.
When you asked in what capacity, you said like peer coaching. So what makes you not a peer? Just because you're not a classroom teacher? Or are you in a position of authority? I think at NIST it's called a position of responsibility, POR, right?
Yeah. I guess I couldn't answer that question. That would be like a good question to ask a teacher. And what I meant by peer coaching is like at what capacity, meaning, so we coach at team levels. So I wouldn't consider that peer coaching. I would consider peer coaching like a one-on-one coaching situation, right? Or if we're looking at larger like whole school initiatives and like how are we doing on that sort of thing, that wouldn't be like a peer situation. That would be more of a systems approach.
And would you say that your role then, because I'm trying to like figure out the differences, the discrepancies a little bit between what Kerri-Lee and Diana have described so far and what I know is coming from Maggie, because I've already had a preview. Sorry, guys.
No, super interested.
So you would say, primarily speaking, your coaching is more on the team level or larger group level. And of course, if there's individual things that come up, absolutely you would support that. But your role in the school is a little more like wider in terms of moving the school's vision forward with teams.
And it's probably, because I'm working on my like leadership PhD, right? So I'm like, that's how I see things now. And so for better or worse, I look at like how everything fits together and like, what are the drivers you need to address to make large scale change? And so that's sort of why I'm at. But then we have, other coaches in the office who are focusing in different areas. But what's really good is as coaches, we work super well together and we communicate just dramatically all day about all these different things. And so we sort of help each other out and give each other heads up on where we can slide in and help move. And they understand the bigger picture as well. So it's just great to be able to work together in that capacity.
Sorry, I'm going to ask one more nitpicky question. Are you guys all in a POR, position of responsibility, or are none of you in a POR? Or just you?
No, actually. So it's just me because no, I shouldn't say just me. I am because I'm for the innovation coaches. Yeah, I'm coordinator of all the learning innovation coaches. And I think the mass coach is because she's the mass coordinator, or, there's different roles and stuff. So yeah. But got it. We don't like whip out our PORs or compare them.
No, just curious, because the structures are all like there's so much overlap, but everything is different, and it's interesting.
Yeah, these are great questions.
All right, now I've hyped up Maggie's story so much. I hope I haven't made it too hard of a sell there.
Okay, so I would say over the years and in changing schools, I've moved from one coaching model to another. I started coaching at a school in Switzerland, and I would say it was very much instructional coaching because that was all I knew. I read the Jim Knight book and I did a MOOC on coaching and so on. And that was really what I thought coaching was. And it was really, I was the expert and I was, running training sessions for people. I attended collaborative planning meetings and so on. And I thought that was really all that there was to coaching. And then I moved to ASB, and actually for the first 2 years I was there, it was a similar model. And then I trained in cognitive coaching, and the model shifted because at that point we also employed tech coaches. And the tech coaches were full-time teachers, but they took on coaching as an additional role. And they were paid a stipend for doing that role, but they still stayed as full-time teachers. So at that time, we had 4 elementary teachers who were also tech coaches, and we had 3 middle school teachers who were tech coaches, and then 3 high school teachers that were tech coaches. And because they were all full-time teachers, the model we used very much was cognitive coaching. They were, of course, sometimes in collaborative planning meetings, if they were coaching their own subject or if they were coaching in their own grade level. At other times, they were not able to attend collaborative planning meetings because they were teaching at the time when perhaps the other grade or the subjects that they were also coaching, you know, they were having a meeting, but the coach himself or herself was actually teaching at that time. So I would say the model shifted significantly, but I think that the important thing was that each of the teachers set a tech goal at the beginning of the year. And it was the job of the coach really to work one-on-one with that teacher to help the teacher be successful. And at the same time, we also collected lots of artifacts, student artifacts, based on the ISTE standards for students. And at the end of the year, we were talking a little bit about data before, so we also presented the data to the individual teachers so that they could draw their own conclusions from that. So the model shifted very much, I would say, from the expert who was transmitting information about tech in one school. And it was necessary to do that because this was back in 2009. It was the beginning of Web 2. Nobody in the school knew, you know, what a blog was or how to get on Twitter or any Web 2 tools at all. So in order for them to get started, they needed to have some consultancy happening. But beyond that, we very much turned towards coaching. And like Ben said, we're very intentional about saying which role we're in. So we could say, well, we're in a collaborative planning meeting, so we are going to collaborate with you to plan something that might use technology. Or we could say we're going to step out of coaching and actually give you some suggestions of tools that you might be interested in using. And then we'd step back into coaching again and we'd say, so which of these tools might be interesting for you to use? And I think, like Ben said, a lot of the time we would have coaching meetings one-on-one where we would be focusing on questioning and paraphrasing what teachers were saying and really helping them to be self-directed about what they wanted to do.
So I think, like, just to kind of summarize, because I'm wrapping my head around all these different examples, it's a little bit like Maggie, the model that Maggie is talking about at ASB is almost like a distributed coaching model where teachers are empowered to be coaches for others. And it's like the model that Ben is talking about is like moving teams forward towards a school goal. And the model that Kerri-Lee and Diana are talking about is potentially also working with teams, but maybe more primarily working with individuals, assessing the needs at almost a personalized level basis to move towards those goals. So far, did I have it like generally kind of right? Because I know Tim has already told us that his is the bizarre model, so I don't know where Tim's is going to fit, but we'll put Tim on the spot next to tell us, Tim, what is your model like?
First of all, man, Ben, I understand why you didn't want to go last now. Wow. I got to follow up after Maggie. That's a pretty tough role to. I'm in a real tough spot here. But I think starting from KIS, which is where I started being a coach, and I was lucky because I got put in a team. And the interesting part was none of the people who were on that team had ever actually been coaches before. And so we didn't know about models. I'm going to say really we were throwing darts. We didn't know what we were doing. And so we stripped away some barriers. We'd be given like divisions that we were supposed to work with. And so the first thing we said is, okay, strip those away. We're not going to have divisions. Everybody works K-12. That's the first thing. We're all committed to this. We all have to work with wherever we're needed, if there's a bunch of us that need to go down to the elementary school and kind of like all team up on something and help out, then we're going to do that. And if everybody's needed in the middle school, then we'll all move there. If we have to disperse ourselves throughout the building, the buildings will do that. That led to the fishbowl for training for people to actually come in and learn, which I thought was great. It was awesome at the time doing it. But it was much more the consultant role that I'm hearing, Ben talking about than it is really like a coach. And so the last 2 years that I've been here, being a department of one, and where our school's growing and where my position's growing, I've read The Coach Approach, and also with a group of admin team members and some key teachers took understanding, like, what was it, school leadership by design. So somebody had taken the design process and applied it to schools and leadership and how to design your school to be a better learning environment. And so I'm kind of helping the admin team move in that direction. And what's come out of that is we've sort of parsed out some of the jobs. Like I'm still focusing sort of on ed tech and what that means, but now our curriculum person is focusing on kind of like coaching people through writing curriculum, because we're in the process of doing that. And so she's sitting down with teams on the systemic level, but sometimes individual meetings with certain people that are struggling, and meeting with them and trying to move them forward on how do we move forward with our curriculum? What are we going to do with this? How is it going to look? How are we going to assess it? How are we going to know when we have student artifacts that mean something, and we can point to them and say, that demonstrates the student learned this. Beyond that, our directors, who are fancy, is a different name for principal. They're just all principals, but we don't use that title for some strange reason that I've never figured out. They're kind of taking on more of an instructional coach role, which is a bit of a forced fit because they're also still involved in evaluation. And so I think some of the teachers feel a little bit apprehensive about saying, kind of outing themselves and saying, I don't feel comfortable doing this, or I don't know how to design this lesson. And I would really like to see, your advice, you come in and look at me and see what's happening and tell me. But it seems like it's moving in that direction. And so it's kind of great to hear, Deanna and Kerri-Lee, I've understood that needs model. I had no name for it. So Deanna, thank you for giving me something to call it now. And now I see like I'm kind of heading in the direction that like Maggie was talking about, but we're not there yet as a school because of our size. So going back to Kerri-Lee's thing of, I'm a department of one in a school of 450 people. And so it's kind of like baby steps, and sometimes it's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But I feel like we're heading in the right direction, and it's getting better every time. When I see it, every month it feels like we head forward a little bit. So that's my odd model. I would call it the amoeba model. It's a little bit everything.
I think it's really cool to hear all those different models in one stream, because it really makes you feel for the teachers who move from school to school, and maybe they were at Tim's school and that's what coaching was called at Tim's school, and then they go to Maggie's school and that's what coaching is called at Maggie's school, and then they go to Kerri-Lee's school and they don't know what coaching is anymore. And I think as coaches, sometimes we're like, why do you not understand what coaching is? This is why, because every school implements it so differently.
Well, and sorry, go ahead, Kerri-Lee.
One teacher at a former school saying, isn't coaching what happens to teachers that aren't good?
Yeah.
That I think is a really big mind shift. And it took a wee while to get used to, we're not here to sabotage people or get them kicked out, that we're everybody's got something that they can strengthen or that they want to try, even with just an extra bit of support. So yeah, that model, I think, that mindset is something that I think needs to change.
And I think that's something consistent between what everybody said. Is not a single person in this description said, I'm there to make teachers who are failing not fail anymore. Everyone was talking about helping teachers reach student learning goals or reach their own professional goals. None of you are in a position where it's your job to make someone where it's punishment or whatever to work with you. So I think that is really interesting. Sorry, Ben, you wanted to say something.
No, that's a great point. I think the invitational piece is important. But then, people say, well, what about the ones who never invite you in? And it's like, well, if it's a teacher generated goal, if they're coming with something that they want to work on, of course they're going to want to work on it. Right. I mean, I think that's an important thing. If it's a school saying everybody must do this, work with a coach, that's a very different model. What I was going to say is it sounds like a lot of our models have sort of either come to existence or been shaped by the needs and structures of our school. So I just want to throw that out there and see what other people's sort of thoughts on that are, because I think ours is is consistently evolving as we come to understand the impacts and that we're having, but then also as we sort of uncover, or we get to understand problems better, you know, because I think we come in with we have this idea that we always want to jump to solutions, you know, but we're taking more time to actually come to understand the problems much deeper, and then we're not the ones actually coming up with solutions. We may be involved in helping other people, but I'd like to hear what other people have to say, if that's okay, Kim, about sort of how their kind of current situation or structures have helped shape the model, and maybe how the model then shapes the systems and structures and how they kind of have this relationship.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. I've been having this conversation a lot as we've been talking about where we're heading as an institution. And one of the things that we've all sort of hit on in the admin team is that the first thing we have to acknowledge is that schools they're organisms, and they're very complex organisms, and they're made up of people, and people are complex. And so anytime you have any type of just turnover, for example, 3 teachers leave and 3 new teachers take their place. Well, those 3 new teachers completely impact the organization and the organism in their own unique ways. And as those things evolve and change, the institution is continually changing. And as the institution is continually changing, our roles become much more malleable and flexible. And we have to be open to that. And especially, I think, for Kerri-Lee and I, when we're at a really small school, it's even more so, because new things happening make a much bigger impact and a much bigger splash in a small pond than they do when you're at a school of 2,500 people.
I definitely noticed a big change at my previous school, where I began as a tech teacher, where I would withdraw, kids would come to me and I would be releasing teachers.
Did Kerri-Lee freeze for me or for everyone?
But at my previous school, it was a very big culture of coaching. So cognitive coaching came in across the board. Everybody was getting trained. It was something that everybody understood. That in my current school isn't where we are at yet. So I certainly can't do those sort of things at this point, but it is a direction that I would hope to grow into. So again, I'm still more on those one-on-one things and getting my teeth in. But I think the school culture really has a lot to play in the type of coaching that you can do.
I would agree with those as well. I saw at my one of my previous schools, I was a coach for 3 years, and each year was different. At the first couple of years was a lot of the consulting, of training, of getting people used to using that technology. And then as people got more comfortable with it, we were evolving over time to be more into the coaching role, connections to the curriculum and the learning in that. So I've seen the same thing in coaches that I've talked to, that it's, like Tim was saying, it's going to evolve with the school, and it should, based on what the school wants to do, where it's headed, and then how those needs change over time.
So I think this actually sort of relates back to what you said at the very beginning, Kim, about how do you keep your job, basically, or how do you not be replaced?
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
All right. Okay, go for it then.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
All right. But I think so. Culture is a difficult thing, right? Because we all sort of are talking about culture, and culture, like an open, trusting culture, lends itself to us being more effective in our jobs, right? But then there's this quote I really love. I just read this book called The Culture Code by Dan Coyle, and it says, you have priorities whether you name them or not. If you want to grow, you'd better name them, and you'd better name the behaviors that support the priorities. And so if we as coaches can do that, if we can name the behaviors that we're working with teachers to cultivate, then we have indicators of success when we have a successful, thriving culture, when people are moving forward in their practice, because not only are we naming them, but the school is naming those as priorities. Because what you air, what you spend your time doing, what you spend your money doing, what the messages you send, that's what you value. And so I think just being conscious of, like, this is a leadership thing. Leadership has to be conscious of the messages they're sending with how we spend our staff time, what we're spending our money on, the message we're sending parents. I mean, every time you get up in front of staff, it's an opportunity to continue building the narrative or crafting the narrative around your values, right? And so it should be in line with, you know, your mission, vision, values, etc. So I think it's just sort of, you know, the bigger why picture. And that's like, that's a very difficult, I think it's a very difficult thing to do, is to be able to draw the line from, okay, we're doing this every day, like at a teacher level or a student level, and, you know, draw a line between what they're doing, and then boom, it nails the vision, you know?
But I think that's exactly it. I think that's exactly how you, for lack of a better word, prove your value as a coach, is you're making those connections back to where the school has identified that they want to go. And here's my piece of the puzzle that I'm supporting in all these different avenues. And I think alongside of that, it is really important that as a coach, you are aware of different types of coaching models. Because like Tim is explaining, maybe right now in his school, his school is not ready for the model that Ben is describing or Maggie is describing. But he, as the person who's the advocate for that aspect of the school, the technology part of the school, needs to know that that might be a potential direction when the school is ready. So I think, like, not only the understanding of the coaching models is really important for you as an advocate for innovative learning in your school, but understanding how the model of coaching that your school currently has is allowing your school to move forward towards meeting those goals is part of you articulating your, what is the right word, value, I guess, for lack of a better word, at the school. That was a conversation stopper.
Well, yeah, so I think, you know, when Kerri-Lee and I had a conversation before she went to Switzerland. That's where you are, right? Switzerland? Yes. I get confused, sorry. There's so many people moving around, especially right now. Like, everybody's like, I need a job. I'm coming from here to there. Anyways, with her, I had a conversation and I said, you know, just having come to a new school, like, it was very important to me to, like, work very closely with admin, because unless we are on the same page and there's a consistent message that's coming across, like, we're, you know, just, what's another way to say, like, you know, I guess throwing water in the wind. I don't know. You know, it's like, it's not gonna, it's gonna be difficult for you to actually make progress, and it's gonna be difficult for you to actually prove that you're having an impact, I guess. So what are other people's thoughts on that? Diana, you're being quiet over there. You always have good things to say. I want to hear from you.
Thank you. Actually, I mean, being new to the school this year, that brings up a lot of things. I have to really look at, you know, what are the goals? What's the mission and vision? What's the history? But also, where are they going? And so right now, it's a lot, and that message is so important. And I'm like super hyper aware of that, particularly right now, being new to the school and building the relationships and building the credibility as well. And you brought up, like, the mission. A big thing for me is, like, how are we connecting what we're doing to the vision and mission of the school? And if, like we were saying, if you can show that, then that helps with the message. I think that message is really important. The communication, not just about the coaches, but in the school in general. What's that culture, and what's the understanding? Because you know, what's an innovation coach? What do you do? And so it's really that message is so important, and showing how we're connecting and providing the support for the bigger picture.
So I have a thought that could potentially be an interesting separate conversation. We do not have time to talk about this now, but Ben, talking about the importance of working closely with admin. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but it would not be unusual for a coach to be hired and either the person that hires them leaves that year, so the new admin coming in maybe doesn't have the same perspective on that responsibility, or that person is replacing somebody else and the admin maybe don't even necessarily believe in the position, but they're just hiring because they know they got to hire somebody for that position. I mean, all sorts of things happen where you can find yourself in a situation where it's not what you're describing, Ben, that you're not totally in line with what even your divisional leadership thinks about the school. And sometimes that's through no fault of either the leadership or you. You just suddenly find yourselves there and you're like, uh-oh, we're not on the same page. And I think that all of you, at least right now, the way you're describing your roles are in situations where you're really fortunate that you are or have been on the same page with your leadership team. But I know I've been in a situation where that is not necessarily the case. I know plenty of coaches that have been struggling because they're not seeing eye to eye with their administrator. So that's a whole separate conversation I think we can have. What do you do when you're a coach in a school where it's not that same message? You're not collaborating with your admin. And I don't want to start that conversation now. I'm curious though, is that interesting? Is that a conversation we should have?
Oh, interesting. I was just, you talked a little bit about how do you show your value, and I just wanted to jump on that a little bit. It's something that I tried at my last school. In terms of showing value, it's a difficult one. How do you, like, if it's improving reading scores, they can take a test, or, you know, if it's maths, you've got those things really there, but this sort of is a culture piece often, or an approach, or a willingness to try something new. It's not an easily accessible type of thing. So measuring your impact is really a challenge. So one of the things I tried was, along with some colleagues in UWC, we created a Google form that tracked all sorts of different types of things. And it was so interesting. So what I was tracking was how many interactions do I have with people throughout the day where I'm doing some kind of consulting or coaching or anything really to do with. So anytime I was in classrooms, anytime that someone stopped me in the staff room and said, hey, can you just show me how to do that again? And it gave me all sorts of information about the types of things people were coming to me for, and how frequent they were. And it was, I think, really surprising for the administrators to see, actually it's this, just even the frequency of interactions was one of the surprising things. I mean, classifying them is also interesting as well in terms of what they're coming for, but if that position goes, where are all of those interactions? With whom are they going to have all of those interactions? And I think I found that a useful tool in providing some data to back up why I felt the position itself, not me personally, but the position itself was a really valuable one, and really contributed to the climate of the school and the growth of the school as a whole.
That is awesome. Does anyone else have an example like that? And we can wrap up the call with anyone who has an example like that to share, and that will kind of close out today's conversation. I feel like Tim is raising his hand. Yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Another time, another place, Ben and I used to work someplace together. I'm not going to name anything, but Ben had mentioned earlier the idea that this is actually, I think, before the recording started, we were just talking about, like, you know, we don't put butts in seats. And so where's the value? Like, when you're an administrator, what do you see? Like, it's very easy and quantifiable to look in a classroom and see 20 students and one teacher. Wow, we know how much we're bringing in. And, you know, unfortunately, we are private schools, and we do live and breathe by tuition, and that's a reality. And so when I was first confronted with that, the place I was working, there was a lot of pushback to having coaches because, of course, these guys were business dudes and they weren't seeing, like, you don't have students. Like, how does this work? And so at that point, we did the same thing that you did, Kerri. We sat down, we constructed a Google form, and we started, like, you know, just tracking data. I brought that same thing to this school, even though I was not asked to, and even though my admin team is very supportive. They totally get what I'm doing. They know my time is valuable. They know what I'm doing is valuable. But I wanted to be able to demonstrably show these are the things that this position involves. Because another thing I wanted to do was help define the position, because when I was hired, it was a brand new, they never had an ed tech director before, and they never had a coach before. So they really kind of were also, like, sort of grasping at straws as to what do we do? What does this person do? And so I took it on myself to define what that is. And through using the data, a lot of other really interesting things came out. For example, I track which divisions I even work with. And so through that, I was able to show, like, our FP, which is our elementary school, and our middle school were actually being underserved compared to what the high school was getting. And so that got me a chance to approach the admin team and say, like, how are we gonna make this more equitable? How are we gonna get me to have more time with the elementary teachers and with middle school teachers? And so did a lot of things. One, it told us that we need another Tim, but there's not going to be another Tim in the works for a while, so that's not happening. But it did give me a chance to say, like, one day a week, I want to be in the elementary school. I want to physically be over there because they're in a different building, and it does make a different feeling. And it's been a huge help. And that came because I had the data to show this is what's going on.
I would propose this is another topic as well, because I'm like, oh, I want to talk to Kerri-Lee, I want to talk to Tim, because I'm trying to do that right now myself. I'm using mostly my calendar and putting things in and trying to figure out a system to track those things of who I'm talking to, how much time, what's the topic. So I would love to hear more about what other people are doing. Sometimes you hear this, how can you measure the coaching? And it is possible. I know it is. I'm trying to figure out for myself, but to talk to other people about how they're doing it. And also, like you said, not just for myself, but then to share with others of, like, here's what I'm seeing, here's how we could, have it as a it's a piece of data and conversation as well. So I would love if that's another topic of ours, or somehow we can chat more at another time, because I'm like, even today I was like, we've been in school for about officially 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm still playing around with how can I document how I'm spending my time. So if a teacher walks by and they see me in the office at my desk, I am spending that hour compiling resources and preparing things for people, not just hanging out. So, but also that for myself, how is my time being spent? So I would love to talk more about that at some time.
Awesome. Message received. We'll have another call on this. And I think it's a really good point, Diana, that it very often when you're sitting at your desk, it's perceived that you're not coaching. So that's also another piece of this pie of demonstrating your value, is that sometimes part of your job is sitting at your desk, even if that's not working with another human being. I don't want to miss out on the chance for Ben or Maggie to share any sort of strategy they've used to demonstrate their value, similar along the lines of what Tim and Kerri-Lee have shared, if you would like to. If you don't have one to share, that's also totally fine.
Yeah, my approach would just be, go talk to teachers, like if I have an evaluator or somebody, and if they want to know if I'm being effective or not, just go talk to teachers. And if you're gathering feedback that I'm not being effective, great. Well, then we need to have a conversation about how I can improve. So I don't want to have to, just feel like I'm constantly justifying my position. So I don't really worry about it. Maybe it's not a very healthy way to approach things, but that would be my sort of take. Like, if we have like an open and sharing thing, if there's something I need to get better at, then let's have a conversation about it.
Mm-hmm. So I would say data is really important. We sent out a survey at the end of the first and second year, I believe, that we had tech coaches asking people how the tech coaches had helped them. And we got lots of data back about, had they been helpful in planning lessons? Had they been helpful in reflecting on lessons? Had they given them some new tech tools that they could use, and so on? The other thing that we tried to do is we collected lots of data about the student learning and student artifacts, and we were able to look at how the technology use of the students had changed over time. But what we couldn't do is we couldn't say, like, is there a causal fact here? Is there a correlation? Is it because of the coaching? Is it because of something else? I mean, that was very difficult for us to say. But certainly we got very valuable data back from the survey that we did of all the teachers.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for not only sharing all of those different models of coaching and kind of ways that you implement and how you kind of match it with your school's structure, but also those really practical, tangible takeaways that I think all coaches struggle with, that we can now go back into our schools and actually implement. Surveying the teachers, asking admin to go talk to teachers about their work, keeping track using your own Google Doc, using your own Google form, like all of that stuff is actual tangible stuff that coaches can go away with and try out. So thank you so much for your time today. I am already looking forward to our next conversation where we can talk even more about some of these things and anything else that might come up between now and then. So thanks everybody for another great conversation.
Bye everybody.
Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. At Eduro Learning, as you know, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got a free digital download for you called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit right in the description box below. And if you're looking for even more, we now offer private coaching sessions to help you work through any specific issue you might be having as a coach or even just as an educator. Do you have a problem you can't seem to solve? Get your introductory private coaching session for free with us. Learn more at edurolearning.com/private coaching. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.